What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
So we certainly got a glimpse of the new and improved Ciryl Gane last night. He looked like a different fighter in there against Sergey Spivak. Now, I understand Sergey Spivak is not Jon Jones, but I want to highlight on some of the things that he really did go back and work on after his loss to Jon, and that is mainly his wrestling. He posted a picture about a week after his loss to Jon Jones, showing that he was taking his grappling seriously. He had started implementing a ton of wrestling into his camp, and he certainly looked like he's made improvements there, not just in his skill, but in his confidence to defend grappling attacks inside of the MMA cage. I mean, that one desperation shot that Spivak put on him, it was very quickly sprawled out, and then Gane got right up and made him pay for it. The other thing I want to talk about is how aggressive he was. Ciryl Gane is very much like a lighter weight fighter with the way he moves. He's very light on his feet. He picks you apart with that jab, and he kind of can move around the outside. He was going for the kill last night. Yeah. He was walking Spivak down. He got him against the cage, and that's ultimately where the fight ended. But beautiful body work, beautiful aggression, great grappling improvements, and I think the best years for Ciryl Gane are yet to come.
Yeah, and everybody that watches MMA is sort of short-minded, right? Everybody seems to think that your last fight is a total indication of who you are as a fighter. And I know that Ciryl Gane doesn't have a ton of UFC fights under his belt, but just recently he was in there with Jon Jones, and anybody that gets in there with Jon Jones knows that it's a tough night out. Some would say the toughest night out in the office. So Ciryl Gane shouldn't have just been, crumbled up and tossed into the trash after that Jon Jones fight, because realistically that would have happened to absolutely anybody in the heavyweight division currently. But I do like the point you're making about how Ciryl doesn't move like a traditional heavyweight. And I think actually a lot of the guys at the heavyweight division don't move like the traditional heavyweights. Obviously, you've got your heavy-handed guys like Derek Lewis out there, and, Francis was very heavy-handed and not super technical, but these new age heavyweights are different. Tom Aspinall was in the crowd. He was saying that he was going to go in there and face off with the winner of this fight, Spivak versus Gane. I didn't see that happen, but of course, Tom Aspinall is very much like Ciryl Gane in the sense that he doesn't move like a heavyweight either. Traditionally, these guys gas out quickly. They don't have great footwork. They're not really, pinpoint accurate strikers and snipers like these guys are. But Ciryl Gane looked great out there, staying behind his jab, forcing the fight where he wanted it, fighting at the pace he wanted to fight it at. But when you're able to back a wrestler up and they have to force takedowns on you, you can almost predict when they're going to happen, because you can really get a good read on those tells and those feints and everything that they start to do. Spivak is a great fighter. He will be a problem at heavyweight for a very long time. But I think Ciryl Gane got his confidence back. I think he realizes now that aside from Jon Jones, he's pretty much a very difficult fight for everybody at heavyweight. And I think that was the exact type of performance he needed to get himself back on track.
Yeah, I think he needed that for himself just as much as all of us wanted to see it for him.
Totally.
And even though it wasn't a lot of wrestling involved in this fight, you could see that he was more confident in his grappling ability, because if you have a guy who's a quote-unquote a better grappler than you, typically you don't walk them down, because you're basically giving them the momentum they need to change levels and get you down.
Right.
And that's why we've seen Ciryl kind of circle around, bounce around, and stay light on his feet to try to be elusive and avoid that. He was confident enough in his abilities, and rightfully so, because he showed a lot of improvements, that he's actually now going to walk his opponent down and implement his game plan, which I think is going to make him more dangerous in the future. And now heavyweight is really exciting, because Jon Jones came in out of nowhere after several years off and just showed everybody why he's the best fighter of all time.
GOAT.
But Jon Jones has also said that he's not really chasing this fight and that fight anymore. It's really only legacy fights. It's only names that people recognize. It's only people that have a certain moniker or title or something that Jon wants. So
that's why Stipe Miocic has been able to stay so inactive for so long, and Jon Jones still wants to fight him, because Stipe was known as the heavyweight GOAT for a while, and to beat just another random heavyweight doesn't make much sense for Jon. But Stipe Miocic under the belt, that's a big one.
Yeah, well, it's the GOAT versus the heavyweight GOAT, and
right.
so it just so happens that Jon was one division below everybody considers to be the heavyweight GOAT, or most people consider Stipe to be the heavyweight GOAT. So if you want to really be the greatest of all time, go up one division and beat the greatest of all time in that division. So I get why John's doing what he's doing. I'm not super bullish on that fight being crazy competitive. But either way, I think it's kind of, we're hitting the reset button after that fight. We're going to get to see some fun. We're going to get to see two all-time greats go at it. And then I think no matter what happens, both of them retire afterwards, and then the heavyweight division is just wide open. So I think heavyweight is really kind of coming into a new era. Ciryl looked better than ever last night. You have Sergey Pavlovich, who looks ultra powerful. He's finishing everybody. And then on top of that, you've got Tom Aspinall, who's still very young in his career for heavyweight, because we know heavyweights don't really even hit their stride till like mid-30s. Right. So we got several good years with several really good fighters and several more on their heels coming up. And I think heavyweight's going to be a very competitive division. It's not going to be one of those divisions where somebody just sits at the top and they're able to hold the belt and fight once a year. I think we're going to see some activity at heavyweight, and I think we're going to see some really good stylistic matchups.
Yeah, and with Jon Jones out of the picture, of course, Ciryl Gane has to be one of the front runners to be a champion at heavyweight once again. And I think that Ciryl Gane, if he's able to make such progress with his wrestling and with his takedown defense and all of the grappling that happens within heavyweight UFC MMA fighting, I think that we could have a real problem on our hands for almost everybody, because you've got your Tom Aspinalls and you've got your other solid strikers at heavyweight, but nobody's at that same level as Ciryl Gane. And that's why people saw him as a perfect candidate to get taken down and just beat him up on the floor and then walk away with a victory, even though it might not be the most impressive. Go out there and try to do what Jon Jones did, or as close to that as possible. Now with Ciryl Gane being able to walk fighters down, not really worry about the takedown defense, and not have to fight on his back foot, which would compromise some of his power, I think we're talking about a very serious threat at heavyweight, especially if Jon Jones does retire.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that Ciryl Gane is the best striker in the heavyweight division. And if you look at the two losses on his record, his kryptonite is grappling.
Right.
He turned Francis Ngannou with a bum knee into a wrestler. That's how much Francis didn't want to engage with Ciryl on the feet. And I understand that game plan. I probably would have advised Francis to do the same thing had I been in his corner. Right. Jon Jones is a different animal, man. He's going to do what he's going to do to win the fight. And Jon is just so far ahead of everybody else in most aspects of the game that he can kind of make things happen the way he wants them to happen. But that being said, if Jon had decided to stand and trade for a couple rounds with Ciryl, how would that have looked? I really don't know. And so Ciryl, now that he's putting this wrestling underneath him and he's rounding out his game as a really lethal lights-out kickboxer with great precision, who also has grappling and the athleticism and the age, and he's not had a whole lot of wear and tear on him. His two losses, he didn't really take a whole lot of damage in those fights. So I think he's somebody to really look out for, and I think he's going to be, when it's all said and done, a heavyweight champion, and I think he's going to have several title defenses.
Yeah, I have to agree. And like anything in life, once you've experienced the worst it can possibly get, you know that you can handle pretty much anything else. And it's safe to say that Ciryl Gane has already experienced the absolute worst it can possibly get, which is Jon Jones at heavyweight, beating him in the first couple of minutes of the fight, completely non-competitive. I don't see Ciryl getting beat up and manhandled like that ever again in his career, unless, of course, it is against Jon Jones again.
Yep.